and the cost for this particular effort is scheduled at $163,600. I have with me representatives from Parsons Brinckerhoff who are here. If you would like, Mike, to introduce yourself and your firm to the commission, and maybe if you have anything you want to add to your effort, now would be the appropriate time to do so.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. President, Commission, it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to speak to you about this project. Just a little background. Again, my name is Mike Zachary. I'm a senior principal with Parsons Brinckerhoff in the Strategic Consulting Group. My background has been in ports and maritime for more than 30 years. I served as the Port of Tacoma's Director of Port Planning and Logistics for 5 years of that time frame. My partner, Ralph Peterite, is the head of our group's Ports and Marine Division for the West Coast. Parsons Brinckerhoff is the consulting services, the professional services arm of Balfour Beatty. Balfour Beatty is a global construction infrastructure delivery firm that has about $15 billion worth of revenues and offices in every country throughout the world, except I just heard we closed our Libya office and our Egypt office recently. But we are from the Pacific Northwest. I grew up here, and in fact, my father sold a lot of equipment to the timber industry on the wharfs back in the 50s and the 60s at Coos Bay. So I enjoy the Pacific Northwest. My side of the argument comes back to what Jeff was talking about in the economics. I also served, I was on 2 panels with the Department of Commerce and the U.S. Department of Transportation called Supply Chain Summits, and it's taking a look at what is actually happening to the industry, both for the United States in terms of exports and imports. The big item that came out of that is China is going to be importing more than they're going to be exporting in about another year. And a lot of that is we as the United States hope to tag on to that. The second item was for the first 2 days of this week, I was down at the Trans-Pacific Maritime Conference in Long Beach. And I cannot echo what Jeff just talked about in terms of change. The port of Shanghai, literally 10 years ago, was not a container port. It was doing about 4 million TEUs, but that was all on barges and moving stuff within China. Today, between Singapore and Shanghai, they're doing each about 27 million TEUs. And there's very little, there's some barge, but there's 27 brand new terminals, each capable of doing 2 million TEUs, so it's a 54 million TEU terminal. All that occurred in the last 10 years. The railroads are looking at different mentalities, both East Coast and West Coast. The entire maritime community must be dynamic. One of the things that came out of Tuesday's meeting was there's now a lack of containers. At the beginning of the recession, China stopped making containers. Containers have gone through the roof. So a lot of the dry bulk, break bulk type of commodities that were started to be put in containers, there are not containers available. So a facility of this type, if it's flexible, and it will be flexible enough, is able to roll with the tide, so to speak, and take advantage of those opportunities. Unless there's any specific questions that we have about the project, that we can get Ralph up here. Ralph will be the project manager on the project, and with his engineering background and his staff, local staff, he will be doing most of the engineering work.
Yeah, I have a question, Mike. I guess I'd like you to respond to, what value do you think this kind of a study brings to the port? I mean, some people would say, well, we don't need a study and spend money and just ask around and it's obvious. What do you think you guys bring in terms of our ability to make decisions and, eventually, if the opportunity arises, have the opportunity to build a terminal like this?
Thank you. I was hoping that question would come up. Let me start off by telling you we are currently under contract with the U.S. Maritime Administration to analyze the impacts of the Panama Canal on U.S. ports and inland infrastructure. And I think what we bring as Parsons Brinckerhoff, and specifically Ralph and myself and the teams that we have inside, I hate to say it's an expert opinion, but we bring an opinion that is based upon fact, It's based upon what's not only happening in Coos Bay and in Oregon and in the Northwest, on the West Coast, in the United States and North America, but globally. These trends I just mentioned, I'm not throwing them out just to throw out. They will affect you. What happens in Coos Bay is known throughout the world by the internet. And so we're bringing you information from which you as a leadership board can make key decisions on. And I will guarantee that we will have a final report that will be given to Jeff to be distributed.
One more question. Your firm did a study for us some time ago.
We did.
And some people would say, well, we have that study, we don't need a new one, and that study indicates that we shouldn't be doing anything with the cargo terminal, or that it was marginal at the time. How would you respond to that?
Well, that study was done in 2003, and one of the things that was very emphatic in that study was the flexibility issue and the market at that time. I'm going to use my Shanghai example. I'm also going to use an example that I had at the Port of Tacoma in terms of not being prepared, but there's been a lot changed since then. The markets are completely different. The pricing is completely different. The ability and the fact that you have, as your Chief Executive Officer brought forward, you have interest. That report was based upon no interest in terms of would the port go out and how would they, what comes first? You build it and they will come, or do you have somebody who's got some interest that can lead it? And that report was very clear that the port by itself, without any kind of interest, was taking a gamble. You're not taking that gamble. You're not in the same position. You're in a completely different position today than you were then.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.